Hey, welcome back to your Dream Coach podcast. I am so glad you're here. If you're new, welcome. I hope this episode is the one that makes you want to go back and binge the entire archive. And if you've been here for a while, well, you already know we do not have any fluff here. We do real. And today's episode, it's about as real as it gets, because I want to start with a question and I want you to actually sit with it before you default to your automatic answer. And so here it is. Do you truly believe, that the life and the business that you dream about is actually available to you? Not available to someone smarter, not available to someone with a bigger following or a fancier degree or a better zip code, available to you right now as you are. If you hesitated even for a second, this episode's for you. I'm Shayla Wey. I'm a small business coach, leadership strategist, and believer that your dream life should feel as good as it does on the inside as it does on the outside in your day-to-day. Because here's what I found in years of coaching small business owners and driven, ambitious humans who are building towards something bigger. The thing that is most often keeping people stuck is not a lack of strategy. It's not a lack of talent. It's not even a lack of resources. It's a lack of permission to think bigger than the box that they have been quietly living inside of. We have been so conditioned to look around at where we are compared to where we think we should be and conclude that we are behind because our goals, behind our peers, behind some imaginary timeline that nobody actually agreed to, but everyone seems to be measuring themselves against. And what if you're not behind? What if the whole framing is wrong? What if the real problem is not that you're moving too slowly, but that you're aiming too small? And so that's what we're going to get into today. Episode 151, you're not behind. You're just thinking too small. And so let's dive in. The comparison trap and the timeline lie. And so why being behind is a story and not a fact. And so I want to start by dismantling that myth. The idea that you are behind. Behind what exactly? Behind whom? Behind the timeline that society handed you at some point and you absorbed without ever questioning it? Graduate by 22, career established by 30, business profitable by year 2, retirement by 65. But whose timeline is this? And more importantly, does it have anything to do with your specific life, your specific gifts, and your specific calling? And I want to tell you about a client that I work with. She came to me completely convinced that she had missed her window. She was in her mid-40s, pivoting from a corporate career into her own coaching practice. She was drowning in the belief that she'd started too late, that the market was too crowded, that younger coaches with bigger followings had already taken the space she wanted to occupy. And I remember sitting with her in one of our first sessions and asking, compared to what? And she could not answer. Because the behind she felt was not based on data. It was based on a story she'd been telling herself for so long it felt like fact. And so here's what I found is that comparison is not a compass. It will never show you where you're supposed to go. It will only show you where somebody else is. And someone else's path has exactly zero bearing on what is possible for you. Now, the social media acceleration problem, and here's what makes this so much harder today than it was for previous generations, is social media has created a highlight reel culture that moves at a speed our brains were never designed to process. We see someone's launch week revenue screenshot, and we do not see the 3 years of failed attempts that preceded it. We see someone's dream life, and we do not see the behind the scene costs of it. And what I found is that the more time my clients spend consuming other people's success content without a filter, the more behind they feel, even when their own trajectory is genuinely impressive. And this is not it's not that social media is evil conversation. It is just being conscious, like being a conscious consumer conversation. Because what you feed your mind directly impacts how big you allow yourself to think. And so what does being behind actually signal? And here's the reframe I want you to sit with. When you feel behind, it is almost never because you're actually behind. It is because part of you can see something bigger than where you currently are. That feeling of being behind is actually your vision outpacing your current reality. And that's not a problem. That is a sign that you are the kind of person who is built for growth. And the question is not, how do I catch up? The question is, how do I expand my thinking to match the size of what I actually want to create? Now, what does small thinking actually look like? And why is it so sneaky? Well, let's talk about what thinking too small actually looks like, because it is sneaky. And it does not always show up as I can't do this. Sometimes it's dressed up in what looks like humility, practicality, or even wisdom. And I think this is why it is so hard to catch. Is reason number one is that small thinking disguises itself as realism. And what I found is that small thinking rarely announces itself. It does not walk in the door saying, I'm going to limit your potential today. It walks in dressed as a reasonable person saying things like, let's be practical. I just need to be realistic. Maybe that's not for someone like me. And I've said these things. I've had clients say these things to me. And every single time when we dig under the realism, what we find is fear of failure, fear of visibility, fear of success and what it will demand of us. Realism has its place, and I'm absolutely a strategy-based coach, and I believe in grounded planning. But there is a massive difference between being realistic about your timeline and being small about your vision. Your vision should scare you a little. If it does not, it's not big enough. Reason number two is small thinking lives in your pricing, your offers, and your ask. Want to know one of the fastest places I can spot small thinking in a business? The pricing page, or the way someone describes what they do when someone asks, or the size of the ask they're willing to make. And what I have found over and over again is that people underprice their offers, not because the market will not bear more, but because they do not yet believe they are worth more. They pitch small because they're afraid of a big no. They stay in their lane because expanding feels presumptuous. And here's the truth, is your pricing is a direct reflection of how you see yourself. Your offer suite is a direct reflection of how big you believe your impact can be. And if you are playing small in those areas, I can almost guarantee it is bleeding into every area of your life, of your business. And what would change if you raised your rates by 30%? What would change if you pitched the bigger stage, wrote the book, launched the course? What if the only thing standing between you and the version of your business is the size of your ask? And what I found is every time I've coached a client to raise their standards, their rates with confidence and a clear value proposition, the right clients say yes every single time. Reason number three is small thinking keeps you busy instead of strategic. Here's another way small thinking shows up that I want to name specifically for the business owners listening. It keeps you busy, gloriously, exhaustingly, productively busy on the wrong things. I have found that when people are thinking small about what their businesses can become, they tend to fill their time with tasks instead of vision. They're in the weeds of every client project instead of building the systems that would free them. They're creating content for today instead of building an audience for the next 5 years. They're reacting instead of leading. And small thinking is the enemy of strategic thinking because it keeps your head down when your job as the leader, as your own business and your own life is to keep your head up. Vision requires evaluation, and evaluation requires you to deliberately, consistently choose to think bigger than your current circumstances. And reason number four is small thinking filters your network. This one might sting a little, and I say it with all the love in the world. The people you spend the time with are either expanding your thinking or contracting it. Full stop. And what I found is that the biggest leaps my clients make in revenue, in confidence, in the scope of what they believe is possible, almost always coincides with a shift in their community. They found a mentor who had already done what they're wanting to do. They joined a room where their goals were the minimum bar, not the ceiling. They started surrounding themselves with people who normal was their aspiration. Your network is your net worth, not just financially, but in terms of the size of your imagination. If everyone around you is thinking at the same level you are, there's no friction, no expansion, no one pulling you up. You need people in your life who actually make the current goals feel small. Not to shame you, but to show you what is actually possible. And this is one of the core reasons I built the LFG Business Academy, because community changes the ceiling. So come find your people. You can join us on Skool, and the link will be in the show notes. And so here's something that I found deeply, deeply connected, is that you cannot feel fulfilled by a dream you're too afraid to claim. And I think it's deeply underappreciated in the conversation when we think about our level of fulfillment, is you cannot feel genuinely fulfilled by a life that is smaller than what you actually want. And I know that sounds obvious when I say it out loud, but I see it constantly. People who'd settle for a version of their dream that felt safe enough and then wonder why they feel low-grade dissatisfaction they cannot shake. Fulfillment does not come from playing it safe. It comes from alignment, from living and building in a way that is congruent with the full scope of what you want and who you are. And that requires courage. The courage to say out loud what you actually want, even when it feels too big, even when you're not sure how to get there. And even when people in your life might raise an eyebrow, claiming your big dream is the first act of fulfillment, everything else builds from there. And what I found is that the moment people stop apologizing for the size of their vision and start building toward it with full permission, something shifts, the energy shifts, the decisions get clearer, the right opportunities start showing up, not because of magic, because they are finally fully in the game. So let's get to the practical side of this, because I'm a coach, not just a cheerleader, and I want to give you something real to work with. And here's what I've actually found when it comes to expanding the size of your thinking, not just for a day or a week, but as a permanent shift in how you operate. And so what I found, number one, is the quality of your questions determines the size of your results. This one changed everything for me and for so many of my clients. Small questions produce small answers. And so if you're asking yourself, how do I get a few more clients this month? You will get a few more client answers. But if you ask, what would it look like to build a business that serves thousands of people and creates generational impact? Your brain starts working on an entirely different problem. And what I found is that the most transformational thing you can do on a daily basis is upgrade the quality of your questions, not as a journaling exercise you do once and forget, as a practice, as a discipline. Before you plan your next week, ask, am I planning toward the business I want to build or the business I have right now? And before you price your offer, ask, what would this be worth if I fully believed in the transformation I deliver? Before you hire, ask, who do I need around me to get where I actually want to go? Better questions, bigger life. What I found, number two, is proximity to possibility is the fastest way to expand your vision. I've never had a client dramatically expand their thinking sitting alone in the same environment, consuming the same content, talking to the same people. Every single time I've watched someone have a genuine breakthrough in how big they think, it was preceded by a change in proximity. They went to an event and sat in a room with people playing at a higher level. They hired a coach who had already done what they wanted to do. They joined a community where their dream was someone else's Monday morning. Proximity is not about comparison. It's about collaboration. And when you get around people who are thinking and building at a bigger level than you currently are, your brain recalibrates what's normal. What felt impossible starts to feel possible, then probable, then inevitable. And this is one of the most underrated growth strategies available in every single person listening right now. And it does not require a huge investment. It requires intention. So go get into the rooms where your goals are the minimum, not the ceiling. And what I found, number three, is that your dream has an expiration date if you keep deferring it. And I want to say this with love and with urgency at the same time. The big dream, the one that's been living in the back of your mind for years, the one that comes up when you are quiet enough to hear yourself think, that dream is not patient forever. I have worked with people who spent years telling themselves they would pursue it when the time was right, when the kids were older, when they had more money saved, when the market was less crowded, when they felt more ready. And what I found in almost every single one of those cases is that the right time never arrived on its own. The right time is created, it's decided. The dream does not wait for perfect conditions. And the longer you defer it, the heavier it gets, because every year that passes without moving toward it adds a layer of regret that is much harder to carry than the discomfort of starting before you feel ready. You are not behind, but you do not have unlimited runway either way. And so start now, and start small if you have to, but just start. And there's a great Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And so I want to wrap up this episode, and let's land this plane. Let's wrap this up. And here's what I want you to walk away with from today's episode, is that you're not behind. And I need you to hear that. You are not behind. The timeline you have been measuring yourself against was never yours to begin with. You borrowed it from a culture that profits from your insecurity, from a comparison trap that social media has made more vicious than ever before, and from a version of yourself that was playing it safe because safe felt survivable. But you are listening to this podcast, which tells me something about you. It tells me that you are the kind of person who wants more, not more stuff, but more meaning, more impact, more alignment between who you are and what you're building. And that person's not behind. that person is exactly where they need to be to make the decision to think differently. And so here's my challenge for you this week. I want you to identify one place in your life or your business where you've been thinking too small. One place where you've been playing it safe when something in you knows you were built for something bigger. And I want you to take one step, just one, in the direction of that bigger thing. Not a perfect step, not a fully formed plan, just one honest, courageous move toward the version of your life that you actually want. Because dreams are not built in the planning, they are built in the doing. And the doing starts when a decision to stop thinking small. Leadership is thinking at the level where you're going. Fulfillment is claiming the dream fully. And growth is becoming the person that dreams acquire. And hey, if you're already around, people who are doing this work, who are thinking bigger, building it on purpose, refusing to shrink, then that's amazing. You also are always welcome to check out the LFG Business Academy on Skool. And as always, the book is coming this fall, and I cannot wait. Everything we talk about on this podcast, the leadership, the fulfillment, the growth, the permission to think bigger, dream bigger than you've already been allowing yourself, it's all in there in a way that I hope will become the companion you return to again and again. Stay close and you'll be the first to know when it drops. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Truly, every single listen means the world. And until next week, stop measuring yourself against a timeline that was never yours. Start building toward the life that actually is. You're not behind. You're just getting started. And I'll see you next time on your Dream Coach podcast.